From Dr. W. J. Brendel, author of Cryptids and Monsters of North Carolina, comes a haunting new true history. Heretics of the Harvest Moon, the true story of the witch trials. A tale of fear, faith, and fire that shaped centuries of persecution. Available now on Amazon and at wjbrendel.com. Step into the darkness and see who survived the flames.
Welcome to Forever Paranormal, where shadows remember and silence has a way of speaking. I'm Dr. Bill, your guide through the strange and the unexplainable.
And I'm Deb. Every week we dig into what hides between belief and proof. Cryptids, hauntings, witchcraft, UFO sightings, and the stories people swear are true.
We don't tell you what to believe. We just look at what's possible, what's been witnessed, and what refuses to stay quiet.
If you like what we do, follow, rate, and share the show. It helps keep the lights on.
And if you want to go deeper, step inside the crypt. Patreon members get the show ad-free, a full day early, and gain access to our entire archives, years of investigations, bonus episodes, and conversations we don't release anywhere else. You can join at foreverparanormal.com or by searching Forever Paranormal The Crypt on Patreon.
And remember that you're never alone. If you ever need someone to talk to, the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline is 988.
He didn't hear it at first. He saw it. Something in the road, ahead, upright, not walking, just closing the distance one movement at a time. Welcome back to Forever Paranormal, where we know Natinuk is more than a myth, and where we know the veil is thin, ghosts walk beside us, strange craft drift above us, and creatures move just out of sight. Every story is a door between worlds, and this week we step through, into a version of the dead that does not rest. It does not decay quietly, and it does not stay where it was buried. This week we're talking about the Jiangshi. Once again, I am graced to have my co-host Deb with me. Hi there, Deb.
Hello.
So, what do you have for us this week?
Outside of aerial phenomena, the paranormal world is still active in quieter ways. Historic locations like the Pennhurst State School and Hospital and Missouri State Penitentiary are reopening for overnight investigations as spring events ramp up.
That's cool.
Bringing renewed attention to sites with long histories of reported activity. At the same time, investigators continue to revisit older cases, not to prove them outright, but to re-examine them with modern equipment and a different perspective. It's not headline-driven, but it reflects a steady shift in the field, where the focus is moving away from proving the paranormal and more toward understanding why certain cases continue to persist.
Yeah, that's pretty good, Deb. Thanks. And, it is kind of making a change. I think most people understand that paranormal probably does exist, but now they're trying to find out why instead of just it is. So that's pretty cool. Thanks again.
You're welcome.
All right, Deb. This one is a little different because it doesn't move like something alive. That's always the first detail people describe. It's not walking, not running, not even stumbling. It's hopping. It's rigid, upright. Its arms extending forward as if it's reaching for something, but never quite adjusting. The body doesn't bend the way a living body should. It doesn't correct itself. It doesn't react. It just advances. In the dark, that matters, because distance doesn't feel the same at night. Something that moves wrong feels closer than it should be. The Jiangshi has been part of Chinese folklore for centuries, particularly during the Jing dynasty. It's often translated loosely as hopping vampire, but that comparison really doesn't hold if you look at it closely, because this isn't a creature that feeds on blood. It drains life force called qi. And that difference matters really more than it sounds, because it shifts the entire idea of what this thing is supposed to be. Not a predator in the traditional sense, but something closer to a disruption. A body that should be empty, but it isn't.
So, where does this come from? Is it a story or is there something more real to it?
Well, Deb, this is where it gets really interesting because parts of it are real. I mean, not the hopping corpse, of course. I mean, there's no verified modern case of that. But the conditions that could rise to the idea, those absolutely existed. Do you ever wonder why Chinese folklore is full of hopping vampires?
Never,
Well, huh?
never knew they existed.
Well, blame the world's most unsettling delivery service. You ready for this? Because back in the day, dead workers needed to get home for burial. So a group of brave, or possibly insane, professionals called corpse drivers would strap the deceased to bamboo poles and basically turn them into the world's least enthusiastic travelers. These stiff passengers were walked thousands of miles back to their hometowns, hopping along the way because, well, rigor mortis isn't exactly known for its flexibility, and to top it all off, the corpse drivers openly operated at night because apparently showing up in broad daylight with a bamboo pole full of bouncing bodies was considered real bad for business. Nothing to see here, folks. Keep on moving. Well, from a distance in low light, what would that look like? A line of bodies moving not quite naturally.
It's very strange for sure, but how did this turn into something attacking people?
Well, you know how it is because once a belief system forms around death, it doesn't stay contained, Deb. It grows. And in the case of the Jiangshi, it grew through Taoist rituals, practice, and protective measures tied to Taoism. Historian J.J.M. de Groot proposes that belief in the Jiangshi stemmed from a combination of factors: the visceral horror inspired by decomposing bodies, the prevalence of unburied corpses scattered throughout imperial China, and a philosophical concept of vital energy permeating the universe and potentially animate inanimate objects. According to him, those objects included exposed dead bodies and stringent cultural prohibitions against delaying burial rites. So these anxieties particularly gripped the superstition populations of Amoy, where such fears took deep root in the collective imagination. There were very specific ideas about what could go wrong after death if a body wasn't buried properly, if the spirit didn't detach cleanly, if outside forces interfered. Then something could remain, not alive, but not gone either. And that's where the Jingshi sits, in that in-between space. And the protections against it are just as specific. Talismans placed on a forehead, usually written in yellow paper with red or black ink. These weren't decorative at all. They were meant to control or immobilize the corpse. Mirrors used to repel or reveal, bells to disrupt or detect, and one of the more unusual ones, sticky rice. Yeah, I don't know why, but it needs to be scattered or applied to the body as a purifying agent. Now, from a modern perspective, that sounds symbolic to me. But let's step back into a time where death was immediate, it was visible, and it was not sanitized, where deep composition happened in your space, not behind hospital doors, and symbolic starts to feel pretty practical, right? You need a reason for this.
So, are they trying to explain decomposition without actually understanding it?
Yeah, partly I think that's the rational explanation. We have to remember, Deb, that bodies don't stay still the way people expect them to. Gas builds inside them, limbs shift, skin tightens, and under certain conditions, a corpse can appear to change position, actually. And because rigor mortis, it comes, but then it goes. So if you're already operating inside a belief system that something can return, those small movements, they don't stay small. they actually become a confirmation. But in folklore, Jiangshi are described as having greenish white skin, possibly deriving from the fungus or mold growing on corpses. Yeah, you heard that right. And they have long hair and may behave like animals. They are ferocious, ravenous beings possessing extreme strength, being described as attacking men with brute force and clumsy violence. Well, I guess if they're hopping around, they can't be too coordinated. They are often represented as being capable of giving chase by running in a hopping manner, and sometimes by flying. One area's folklore says the Jiangshi come from the hills, soaring through the air to devour the infants of the people. But here's where the line blurs, because there are accounts, well, not verified in a modern evidence type of sense, but repeated often enough in regional folklore that they carry weight. These are stories of travelers encountering something rigid on the road. Stories of bodies that were buried and then found elsewhere. Stories of entire villages refusing to move at night because something was seen moving between homes. Now, are those stories reliable? Well, I would have to say not in the way a police report would be liable, but they're consistent. And consistency in folklore usually points to a shared experience, even if the interpretation of that experience may be off a little. And of course, there's another layer that people always don't consider. Fears shape perception. If you believe something moves in a certain way, you will see it move that way. If you expect the dead to rise, you will interpret anything unusual as proof that they have. That doesn't make the experience fake. It just really makes it human.
So is there a way to protect yourself from this?
Well, yeah, of course there is. I mean, we can't have spooky beans without protection. Traditional methods for warding off or neutralizing Jiangshi are documented across classical Chinese text and folklore. And I'm sure I'm going to butcher some of these words, Deb, so just live with me on it. Yeah. Well, you use mirrors. According to Li Shizhen's medical treatise, Ben Kao Gongmu, a mirror embodies the essence of liquid metal. Dark externally, yet luminous within. So Jiangshi are believed to recoil and tear upon encountering their own reflections. The Jingchu Suishi Ji states, peach represents the quintessence of the 5 elements, capable of subduing malevolent energies and repelling evil spirits. Objects crafted from peach wood are therefore considered potent talismans. Yan Mei Zibu Wu observes malevolent spirits retreat upon hearing a rooster's call, as this sound typically coincides with sunrise, a time when supernatural entities lose their power. Then we have jujube seeds. The Zibu Yu prescribes affix 7 jujube seeds to the acupuncture meridians along a corpse's spine as a preventative measure. And according to the same source, sacrifice by fire produces distinctive crackling sounds accompanied by the eruption of blood vessels and the resonance of bones, effects to believe to destroy the creature. Now, I know I butchered some of these words, folks, and I'm sorry. I can tell by Deb's uncontrolled laughter over here next to me, but we got through it anyhow. So we're going to go with some additional remedies, which include hooves of a black donkey. You have Taoist talismans, fulu, inscribed on the forehead, holding one's breath. Bagua symbols, the I Ching, the Tong Shu, sticky rice, adzuki beans, handbells, thread treated with ink and chicken blood, black dog blood, stonemason's awls, axes, brooms, and strategically scattered coins. I guess the later supposedly distracts the creatures through their compulsive counting behavior. Well, apparently this isn't the only creature that counts. We've had that before.
If you've missed an episode or want to hear them all, step inside the crypt. It's where every past episode of Ever Paranormal lives, along with exclusive bonus shows you won't hear anywhere else. Join us at foreverparanormal.com and unlock the archives.
Let's go back to the corpse driving thing. Why was that a practice anyway?
Well, that's a great question. During the Qing dynasty, laborers from all over China often engaged in difficult construction work, and they were in the backwaters of western Hunan. And the mortality rates, they were pretty high. The Chinese preferred to be buried alongside family, partly due to the belief that their souls might feel homesick if they were buried far from the home. So an industry for transportation of these corpses to their native villages began, and it often crossed thousands of miles, And let's talk about two oral accounts of transporting corpses, okay? In Liao Yuwu's The Corpse Walker, one account describes how corpses would be transported by a two-man team. One would carry the corpse on his back with a large robe covering both of them and a mourning mask on top. The other man would walk ahead with the lantern and warn his companion about any obstacles ahead of him. The lantern was used as a visual guide for the corpse carrier to follow since they could not see with the robe covering them. Though it was speculated in the accounts in the book that corpses would be carried at night to avoid contact with people, and the cooler air would be more suitable to transport bodies. As you can imagine, actual corpse driving using manual labor gave rise to legends and rumors of the use of Taoist sorcery to transport dead bodies. According to these tales, the relatives of a person who died far away from home could not afford vehicles to have the deceased person's body transported home for burial. So they would hire a Taoist priest to conduct a ritual to reanimate the dead person and teach him or her how to hop their way home. The priest would transport the corpses only at night and would ring bells to notify others in the vicinity of their presence, because it was considered bad luck for a living person to set eyes on a Jiangshi. Some speculate that the stories of the Jiangshi were originally made up by smugglers who disguised their illegal activities as corpse transportation and wanted to scare off law enforcement officers.
Do people still believe in this?
Well, yeah, I can say for a fact they do, because this is still popular culture. In popular culture, there's such things as Jiangshi movies. Jiangshi have a standard appearance, right? They have a paper talisman attached onto and hanging off the forehead in a portrait orientation, and wear a uniform coat like a robe and a round top tall brimmed hat characteristic of the Qing dynasty Mandarin. The influence of Western vampire stories brought the blood-sucking aspect to the Chinese myth in more modern times in combination with the concept of the hungry ghost, though traditionally they feed solely on the qi of a living individual for sustenance and in order to grow more powerful. Some claim that their modern visual depiction of horrific Qing officials may have been derived from the anti-Manchu or anti-Qing sentiments of the Han Chinese population during the Qing dynasty, as the officials were viewed as bloodthirsty creatures with little regard for humanity. Although the plausibility of this claim is affected by the lapse of time between the modern depiction and the end of the Qing Empire. Jiangshi legends have inspired a genre of Jiangshi films and literature in Hong Kong and the rest of East Asia. Movies such as Mr. Vampire and its vicious spin-off, Mr. Vampire 2, Mr. Vampire 3, Mr. Vampire 4. Well, they all became cult classics in comedy horror and inspired a short-lived vampire craze in East Asia, including Taiwan and Japan. The craze subsided quickly by the mid-1900s, but enjoyed a brief resurgence in the early 2000s, because they had attempts to experiment with the genre by producing pure horror movies such as The Era of Vampires, which didn't have any comic elements at all. But those kind of movies met with criticism and lacked the same popularity. However, today the Jiangshi appears in toys and video games, such as Hisenko in Darkstalkers, Chi-Chi in Genshin Impact, Chiaotzu in Dragon Ball, Yoshika Miyako in Taohu Project, and a pair of Jiangshi appear as cyborg antagonists in the video game Nine Sols. And, of course, Jiangshi costumes are also sometimes worn during Halloween. At its core, the Jiangshi isn't just a monster story, Deb. It's a reflection of how people understood death when they had to live close with it. The name itself translates to stiff corpse or hopping vampire, and that detail carries through everything. This isn't something graceful or supernatural in the way Western vampires are usually imagined. It's rigid, it moves wrong, it exists in a body that should already be still. Its origins aren't clean or singular either, right? Some stories point to improper burial, to spiritual imbalance, possession, or even something as simple as a body left too long without rest. In traditional belief, part of the soul could leave while the other part remained, and that imbalance was enough to animate what should have been empty. And then there's the part that grounds it all in reality. In parts of China, bodies were transported long distances to be buried in their home villages. They were carried upright, bound together, moving at night. From a distance, they didn't look like something being carried. They looked like something really moving on their own. Over time, these images became something more. The Jiangshi turned into a creature that doesn't just move, it feeds, drawing life force instead of blood. Something closer to energy than flesh, strong, unnatural, and tied to the idea that death doesn't always resolve cleanly. All right, Deb, if you're done laughing hysterically at my butchering of all these words and names, you got any comments on the Jiangshi?
Well, it seems that vampires appear in folklore in every culture, which I really never thought of, so thank you for bringing that to light. This was a very interesting story.
Well, thank you. Well, I want to close with a couple thoughts here. The Jiangshi, like most things that stay around this long, doesn't fade. It evolves. It moves from folklore to film, into pop culture, and something, well, almost familiar. But it's never completely comfortable. Because at the center of it, the idea is simple. It's hard to shake. A body that should be at rest. Well, it isn't. And once that thought takes hold, it doesn't really matter whether it's real or not. It just has to feel possible. Well, at least until next time, when we discuss another tale yet to be told. Thanks for listening to Forever Paranormal. Follow, rate, and share the show. It helps others find us and keeps the stories coming. Step inside the crypt for archive and exclusive episodes at foreverparanormal.com. And keep up with my latest books and research at wjbrendel.com. And until next time, remember, the veil is always thinner than you think.